Scholars, it's Miss Allen from Riverside High School. Today you are going to be completing your archetype notes. So first of all, make sure you have your archetype notes. You should have received a sheet of paper like this in class, or you might be completing these on your device. Either way, make sure you have these and a writing utensil handy. Write your name and class period at the top. If you need to go find those, pause the video and come right back. I'll wait here for you. Okay, great. So as we go through this video, anything that is in bold on my screen, you need to write down on your notes. I will make sure to prompt you to fill in those bolded words as we go. So this is a video about archetypes, and this is something you probably already know a lot about, even if you're not familiar with this word. So first I want you to go down to the Brainstorm box, and I want you to think about myths or fairy tales you remember from childhood. Brainstorm a list of stories, events, and a cast of characters. Think about fairy tales, nursery rhymes, Disney movies, making note of any patterns. Pause the video and do that now. Welcome back. Hopefully you started to see some patterns, and as we go through these archetype notes, think about those examples that you wrote down here and see if you're going to ask yourself at the end of the video, is this in fact an archetype? So researchers have been able to collect and compare myths, legends, and religions of cultures from all around the world. They discovered that for centuries, people who had no contact with each other had passed down stories through generations that were similar to the stories of other cultures. The basic elements of these stories are called archetypes. Go ahead and say it, archetypes. So what, you might ask, is an archetype? An archetype is a character, action, or situation that is a prototype or pattern of human life generally. And some common categories of archetypes are objects or images, character types, and patterns of events or plot designs. We're going to talk about these more in just a second, but first pause the video and fill out your notes. You should fill out these first two parts with those bolded words. Great. So I think that it will help me to give you an example here. I'm going to give you an example of a character archetype. So remember, this is a pattern. This is a type of character that we see in lots of different stories across time. So an example of a character archetype is the hero, right? This is an archetype we're going to discuss with great detail this whole semester. But you know what a hero is, and you can probably think right now of a couple of movies that have hero figures in them. So what we're interested in is the fact that heroes show up in stories that are really old and stories that are really new. So let's think about, we're going to go on to who created archetypes. Noted psychologist Carl Jung coined the term archetype to describe patterns he observed in literature that appeal to the reader's subconscious drives. Go ahead and write that down. I'm going to read it one more time as you write down the bold words. Noted psychologist Carl Jung coined the term archetype to describe patterns he observed in literature that appeal to the reader's subconscious drives. So this gets at one of our essential questions, which is why do humans tell stories? And Jung is saying that part of why humans tell stories is because these patterns appeal to something innate within us. Pause the video if you need to finish your notes. So next we're going to talk about how we apply this idea of archetypes to the work that we're going to do in English class. But first I want you to think about the critical lenses that we use when we're reading. So when we talk about archetypal criticism, I want you to think about criticism as a lens, like glasses, through which you see things. And what your lens is going to impact what you pay most attention to and what you maybe ignore. So you already use these critical lenses when you read. So think about, for instance, reading something with an awareness of its historical context, right? You might pay attention to the culture a story was written in, and how that shapes the narrative. That's one of the things we're going to do in English 9. So that's an example of a critical lens. Archetypal criticism is another type of critical lens in which we use archetypes as our lens to view the story. So what is archetypal criticism? Archetypal criticism is the method of literary criticism, those are the glasses, that identifies these patterns as uses them as a basis for discussion and interpretation of the meaning of a literary work. So go ahead and pause the video and fill out your notes in bold. You should be right here at what is archetypal criticism. Moving forward, and some of these aren't bolded, I'm sorry. So the first word you'll need to write down is writers. Young believed that writers, poets, and artists use these symbols, write that down, to help us understand who we are, where we come from, where we are going, and what is important to us. So pause the video and finish writing down your notes for this slide. In other words, archetypal criticism is where we use those archetypes as our glasses when we're reading stories to look at the patterns we see across stories and discuss why that might matter, and why they matter to us, and if those archetypes mean anything to us. Great. So now we're going to do a little bit of practice. At the very bottom of your guided notes, you'll see there's an archetype sort. And I want you to sort these archetypes into the 3 types. So remember, I told you there's 3 types of archetypes: objects or images, character types, and P stands for pattern of events. So just do your best, and next to each one of these, see if you can figure out whether it's an O, C, or P. We will discuss that in class, so make sure you finish it before class and bring any questions that you have to class. All right, great job, everyone.